Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Ankush, for getting us started. Uh, welcome all of you participants to for this webinar to an introductory module or capsule on our Paint India 2024 exhibition. As you can see in the holding slide, the date and the venue are already amply clarified. Very quickly, why are we doing this webinar in the first place? Okay, this is not a new event for the industry. It's definitely not a new event for most of you. There are a lot of things that are already well ordained. It's a well-oiled mechanism. It's a very, very successful show over many years. So why do we really need to do this webinar? There are two large reasons behind it. One, fundamentally, it is keeping in sync with our philosophy, our intent, and our modus operandi going ahead to be as transparent, as accessible, and as openly communicative with the entire industry as possible going ahead, because I think this is what characterizes Paint India's relationship with the industry. We do not want to be sitting on a perch as some kind of inaccessible event organizer holding this nice, wonderful exhibition that all of you know as Paint India. We want to be there. We strongly believe that this is an event that's owned by the industry. We are only the curators for this, and hence all of you have a right to know exactly what the thought process is behind the convening of this event. There are significant investments in time, money, effort, and expectations on the part of the industry at this event. So it's only becoming that we be as transparent and communicative as possible. That is on the more fundamental, deeply philosophical side. Having said that, there are also a lot of changes that are taking place in the world around us today. So if I take our mind back to 2020, we all know what happened. I'm not going to repeat it, but we could not hold Paint India, which was originally going to be held in Mumbai in Bombay Exhibition Center. We postponed it to 21. Even that could not take place because of COVID. We then went into 2022. We did the Mumbai show, but at a new venue, which was Geo, which was significantly different to what we are accustomed to at NESCO and what we will experience next year at NESCO. So this is one fundamental change. Then we also had for the first time the Delhi edition that was launched. And as most of you would have seen either as exhibitors or visitors, it was a grand success. So we had a shift in the Mumbai venue. We had a shift geographically to Delhi. And now we are back to Mumbai, to the good old NESCO. So I just wanted to take you through these, this wave of changes as to what is going to remain the same, what is going to change, what the methodology is, and of course, what all of you could expect. So this is the reason why we're actually going ahead and doing this particular webinar. I'm not going to be taking too much time. It's not like one of my knowledge sessions, which tends to go on for a long time. I'll try and wrap this particular narrative up in the next 15, 18 minutes. And then, of course, I'm happy to take whatever questions that might come. A few of you have already sent in your questions to us by email, so I'll try and address them. The request is to please use the Q&A tab that is there in the Zoom control panel to send in your questions. I'll try and answer them at the end of this. So very quickly, this is what I'll try to cover in the next few minutes in terms of what we really are looking at. What is it that you could expect with the show. So I'd request all of you to just, because I'll switch this slide off. It's a bit of a distraction for the moment, but you can just take a quick look and see what I'd be addressing. Okay. So let me quickly start. Just to reiterate, the dates for Paint India 2024, 22nd to 24th of February 2024. This is a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, as always. This is how Paint India is always held in its 3-day format in Mumbai. It will be the same this time, 22nd, 23rd, 24th of February, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The venue, the city is going to be at Mumbai again. The venue is going to be Bombay Exhibition Center. To draw a line of reference, this is the show this is the same venue that was going to be our venue for the Unfulfilled 2020 show. And if you go further back in time, the last show that was actually held at this venue was 2018. Many of you would remember from memory the particular venue that was there. It's at Goregaon on the Western Express Highway, very close to the airport. So that's as far as the date and the venue are concerned. As far as the scale and growth is concerned, okay, let me try and give you a sense of what we're looking at in terms of scale. So let's look at the two recent shows that were held. There was the Mumbai show in 2022 at Geo. This show will be about 2.5 times the size of that show, or maybe even a little more. So the Geo show, for all its grandeur, all its success, and even its significantly large scale, we faced a huge space constraint. So we are back to NESCO, which offers us a much larger floor plate, offers us differentiated halls. I will come to that particular part in a while. So we have a much larger floor plate, which results in a show that will be about a little more than 2.5 times the size of Geo. So on that note, it's worth mentioning that PaintIndia is not a small regional show or even a national show or just a show which is for India and a few neighboring countries. It is genuinely an international show. Now, the word international is used very, very frivolously, unfortunately, but believe me, this is a truly international show for our industry. So we're talking of 2.5 times the size of the last show at Geo. If you want to look at a more recent frame of reference, which was the Delhi show, this show would be about 5 times as large as the Delhi show. Of course, the Delhi show is not a fair comparison because the Delhi show was consciously, intentionally kept by us to a certain size. But nevertheless, not being judgmental, just in terms of sheer numbers and comparison, this was the difference between this will be the difference in scale between the Delhi show and the Mumbai one. The exhibitors now, this is of course common sense, but since I am doing the webinar, it's worth repeating ourselves here. The exhibitor profile for this particular show is going to be all raw materials, be it additives, pigments, resins, emulsions, biocides, bulk chemicals, any raw material input that goes into the paint industry is the primary profile. Whether you're a manufacturer, whether you're a distributor, a reseller, whether you're an Indian entity, an overseas entity, this is the big chunk of our raw material inputs. Then, of course, you also have the manufacturing equipment that's there, whether it's the GD, whether it's the attritors, whether it's the tinting systems, whether it's the ball mills, whatever it is, anything that goes into the manufacturing of paints, printing inks, construction chemicals, and adhesive sealants. Let's also be very clear, when we say PaintIndia, of course, the first thing that comes to mind is paints. And of course, it is 80% of the constituency that we are addressing. But let us also not forget that given the commonality in the raw material and the manufacturing supply chain for paints, coatings, printing inks, adhesive sealants, and construction chemicals, all of these sectors are game in terms of manufacturing. So if you're a raw material manufacturer or an equipment manufacturer, or also a quality assurance service provider or equipment manufacturer, this is the third large profile that's there. If you're supplying to any of these industries, not just paints and coatings, this is the place to be in, because as it turns out, not only is PaintIndia representative of this, but in the absence of any worthy show for these other segments, and given the commonality, we are also being a true representative of these industry segments in a manufacturing and sourcing parlance. So this is the exhibitor profile, and of course you also throw in certain elements like services, whether it's transportation, whether the whole works. If you are a supplier, in conclusion, if you are a supplier to any of these industries, this is the show for you. Visitors, I have already mentioned our core constituency groups in terms of the industry segments. Also to bear in mind that there are, so The philosophy, I think it's also my duty to share with you, the philosophy that we adopt at Paint India when we do our visitor marketing in terms of segments. So there are two categories in terms of our visitor marketing. One is the segment in terms of the industry, and one is the geography. I'll come to the geographical part a little later. But in terms of the industry segment, we try to define it as concentric circles. What do I mean by that? It's like a dartboard, okay, or when you have the bow and arrow, the archery, the concentric circle at the center, which is the most important part for us, is of course paints and coatings. So maximum efforts will be apportioned by us in terms of getting the paint industry from here right across segments without bias. I'll come to the segmentation later, but the paint industry is the most important component for us, paints and coat. The second one is, as I said, printing inks, adhesive sealants, and construction chemicals. This is also now slowly morphing from being a second peripheral concentric circle into our core for reasons that I already explained. So this becomes then almost 90% of our profile. But let's not forget that with the scale, the size, and the relevance of the show, and also the diversity of exhibitors who are actually there showcasing their products, it becomes a very, very prime sourcing forum for other industries also. These industries are composites. These industries are master batches, compounds. It could also be, let's say, artificial leather, footwear. So there are so many industries who, let's say, for example, let's go back to our product categories that are on display. Okay, let's take pigments. I'm just giving pigments as one example. Pigments go into multiple industries, right? Go into paper, go into textile, go into master batches, go into footwear, go into artificial leather, all of these. There is no single forum in India where you would have the number of pigment manufacturers exhibiting at Paint India as there is in any other show. So even if you go to the largest footwear show in India, or you go to the largest plastic show in India, the number of pigment manufacturers who are displaying their products here are much larger than those shows. And similarly for certain other product profiles. So it makes so much sense for people from those industries to use Paint India also as a sourcing forum, not because it's Paint India, but because of their demand being met in terms of pigment sourcing. As I said, extend this sentiment or extend this thought process to other industries, and Paint India, ladies and gentlemen, is catering to a much wider segment than you can imagine. This is something that we have been taught by our exhibitors, all of you, and it is something that has grown on us as a result of feedback from visitors. So on the one hand, it is something that tends to happen on its own, but on the other hand, as we learn over a period of time, we apportion significant strategies to, so let's say the master batch industry, it's a huge consumer of additives and pigments. So rather than letting it float and just having as many people as who wish to walk in do so, we actually have a significant strategy built around this. We have the database for all the leading master batch manufacturers in the country and in the region. So there are strategies. It's important for you to know this, everyone. There are strategies apportioned to each of these segments: leather, composites, pigments. So there is a large constituency that we are catering to in terms of the industry segments or the industry verticals also that we are looking at. Also, what we have learned over the last few years is initially we used to look at it in a very flat two-dimensional structure. Here we used to say this particular set of companies are exhibitors, this particular set of companies are visitors, which is of course fundamentally true, right? I mean, either you're there to either buy or to either sell. But what we have learned over a period of time, again, as the show has gathered popularity, significance, and scale, is that everyone who is a buyer is also a seller, and everyone who's also a seller is also a buyer. So unless you are selling something which is absolutely at the start of the supply chain, which eventually would be something like crude or base minerals, or you're absolutely at the other end of the value chain, which means you're selling the finished product. Everything in between, there is a lot of cross-buying and cross-selling. And the amount of importance that is accorded to this cross-buying, cross-selling. So it's not only a paint manufacturer buying a pigment because he needs it in his formulation. You have large pigment manufacturers buying from small pigment manufacturers. You have people in one chemistry wanting to enter into another, and they buy from their other peers in other chemistries. You have traders who are large-scale buyers of these products. So we have built in this intelligence, this understanding, and this business element into our marketing so that the return on investment and the bang for the buck for all our exhibitors is greatly enhanced. So what I'm trying to say, ladies and gentlemen, is Paint India's success is not an accident. There is a lot of analytics that go into it. And when I say analytics, one is the tool-based analytics, which is, of course, the easier part, honestly, in today's digital world. But there's a lot of business intelligence that goes into it. We have been mapping buying patterns. We have been mapping the supply chain. We have been mapping customer preferences. And all of this is going into enriching the event, which is not a surprise when you consider the kind of global influence that Paint India has today. Obviously, there is a reason why Paint India is punching above its weight. As a coatings industry, we are only 6% of the globe, give or take a bit. We are only about 6% of the global coatings economy. But to still be recognized, acknowledged as unarguably the third largest coating in the world, it takes something special. And I'm being here transparently sharing with all of you some of the elements that have led to that particular success. Because this is, I want all of you to be prepared for all these business avenues on offer. And I want to be held accountable to my word. So when you participate in Paint India, this webinar incidentally is being recorded. It will be shared with all of you. It will be in the public domain. So every statement that I'm making right here, I want to be held accountable to it, and I want that business benefit to accrue to all of you. So this is what we are doing in terms of segments. Geographies. At the start of my webinar, somewhere in the start, I mentioned that it's no longer a pan-India show or a regional show. We are committed, and I'm making this as a very, very emphatic statement of commitment. It's not easy, but I want to commit myself on this particular public forum. We are committed to getting a lot of international supply chain partners, not so much, of course, exhibitors. Anyone who's interested in business here will come, but I am referring actually to buyers, institutional buyers, whether it's manufacturers, traders, people who will help all of you expand your business avenues beyond the shores of India. Because eventually, for business to grow exponentially, we must not remain confined to the borders of our country, especially in today's globally competitive world. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are committed with particularly, it's been an ongoing effort, but with this edition of Paint India, we are very, very strongly committed to bringing you institutional buyers and customers from beyond the shores of India. Please be prepared for it in terms of your strategy for participation, and please hold us accountable for this statement. We will also, of course, we will have some high-end conferences also that are going to be running concurrently to the main showpiece event, which is the exhibition. These will be in the form of technical scientific congresses. These will be in the form of panel discussions and in the form of product presentations. So to satiate the needs of the technology community or the R&D community, we will also have these elements which lend a bit of a logical completeness to the show. One point I wanted to emphasize, as I said, is the use of technology. So while we are very brick and mortar as an industry, and honestly, we have also in the past been very brick and mortar or very traditional in our treatment of the industry, okay? We do not rely solely on running social media campaigns and, the usual digital tools that are there, which are more convenient. But honestly, in an intensely B2B and traditional industry like ours, that's not, contrary to popular belief, that's not the sole recipe to success. It takes a lot of physical engagement. It takes a lot of personal engagement. It takes a lot of travel to the customers to showcase your commitment, to showcase your knowledge as to how it can translate into benefits for the industry. And we continue to do this. So all of you know, many of you know about our Paint India outreach programs, which are basically conferences that run across the country in between two editions of Paint India. So apart from having a standalone technical relevance, these conferences are also envisaged as road shows to propel the visibility and the memory of the next Paint India that's coming up. So there is no on-off switch, ladies and gentlemen, for us. We finish a Paint India typically on a Saturday evening. Sundays, of course, a rest. And on the Monday morning, the next Monday morning, we are up and running again, continuously engaging with the industry through these conferences, through some of these webinars that I do, and of course, through the monthly publication. So this continuous engagement is a hallmark of how we are engaging with the industry across the length and breadth of the country. So when I talk about geographies that we are covering, Pan-India is a given across these various industry verticals. This year, we have taken a conscious decision to really go out. So earlier, all the international customers that used to come based on the sheer size of the show, the scale of the show, of course, the quality of the exhibitors, which is a credit to all of you, not so much to me, but also a recognition of the fact that India is a destination, a business destination whose time has come in terms of sourcing in particular, and also, of course, in terms of selling. But having established that, so one is being at the right place at the right time, which we are fortunate and blessed to be in. But we are not just resting on this particular convenience element. We are actually going out, engaging with industry partners, engaging with supply chain players, engaging with end-use individuals and associations who will propel this international buying sentiment that I spoke about. So we will be holding our road shows. We will be going and engaging with these industry partners in different countries beyond India. We've already done Turkey. We've already done Sri Lanka. We've done Bangladesh. We're going to Indonesia. So, of course, Germany, I mean, all of you who were there would have seen the kind of reception, the kind of promotion that we got with Paint India at the European Coating Show. It had to be seen to be believed, even though, of course, you all know by now that the European Coating Show is our partner at Paint India. So, of course, it was common knowledge that they would promote it. But again, the manner in which Paint India was promoted, and I put on record my gratitude to my partners in Germany, but it was also a sign of the importance that the global coatings community is according to India, through Paint India as a lens or a window to this particular thing. So again, the point that I was trying to make is that we are making very, very conscious efforts to go out, engage with the industry, and ensure that we are inviting stakeholders from beyond India to come and be a part of the Paint India show in terms of visitors. Again, I repeat myself, the exhibitor element is something that will happen on its own. And I'm saying this in all humility, but our efforts are going to be concentrated on getting those quality visitors who will make the investments that all of you are making into the show worth your while and worth your money. So on the technology side, as I said, apart from this personal engagement, we are using data analytics, we're using social media, we're using a lot of AI tools that are there to try and map buying patterns. Now, a lot of it is, of course, our intellectual property, which I can't reveal too much about. But again, I want to be held accountable for this. We are making very, very informed business decisions in terms of what kind of visitors and what kind of engagement we are harboring at this particular show. We are in the process of developing some matchmaking apps, which will allow visitors and exhibitors to have a better interaction, better discovery, and make their time more focused and more, let's say, more worth the while. Finally, it's 22 hours of exhibition time over these 3 days, and we have to ensure that everyone makes the best use of this time. And we are going to rampantly use technology to facilitate this. So this is a bit of the background. Once again, I urge everyone to please feel free to send in their questions on the Q&A tab if there are any. Otherwise, I'll also address the pre-received questions that are there. The point on everyone's mind, apart from the background that I've given. So what is it that you can expect in terms of the floor plan, the pricing, the allocations? How are we going to do the allocations? So let me spend the next 6 or 7 minutes on this, after which I will throw the floor open for question and answers. So First things first, I remind ourselves that we had an unfulfilled 2020 exhibition, which means we had a ready floor plan, a real floor plan with real bookings, with real planning, and we couldn't execute it because of COVID. This being the same venue, what we are doing by default is allowing a rollover of that plan to happen into 24, which means, let us say you as an exhibitor had a certain location in a certain size and in a certain form. By default, not committing it, but by default, this is our starting process. We are trying to ensure that the same thing is offered to you once again, so that the element of reworking, rethinking, re-strategizing is kept to a bare minimum. Having said that, if somebody wants to shift location, wants to change size, this is not hard-coded. You are at complete liberty to be able to do this. Of course, all of this is subject to the various permutation combinations on availability and demand. But the headline in this particular thing is we are trying to take the 2020 plan and offer it as a first right of refusal to most companies, which I believe would take care of almost 70% of the bookings and the allocations, which again is good for all of you, because I know the effort that goes into making a choice of location, internal discussions, deliberations, etc. So it's a case of not reinventing the wheel. So I think a lot of our time, your time, would be saved in this particular process. But again, I'm repeating that if you want to have some kind of a variation, you're most welcome to do that and get back to us in terms of what you want. The demarcation of zones. As I said, we are blessed with a much larger floor space at NESCO, or Bombay Exhibition Center as it's called. So we will have 3 distinct halls. Hall number 3 would be exclusively for machinery, which includes manufacturing, consumables, testing services, testing equipment, packaging, and all kinds of ancillary services. This is a big profile, which is, let's say, not raw material oriented, but let's say more manufacturing oriented, but a very, very important portfolio. And to give it the standalone importance, we will have one large dedicated hall only for this. Also to note, what this allows the machinery companies to do is individually get their pride of place without having to compete for vantage locations with the raw material industry, who will have their own space. There will be different fights for that particular floor space, but that's a different matter. This is our endeavor and commitment to give standalone importance to the machinery and services and ancillary segments. It's also very important for the visitors, because visitors come with very clear perspectives on wanting a certain zone only for machinery. Your buying patterns, sometimes even your decision makers for this particular segment are different. So rather than having them get confused and going around in terms of who are we supposed to meet and where are we supposed to find these particular companies, we have a standalone hall for them. This is hall number 3. Hall number 2, interestingly, is, and we have done this once in the past, is going to be a standalone hall only for pigments, colorants, and titanium dioxide. Again, this is a recognition of the fact that India is now become such a strong sourcing hub for pigments. So we want to give the pigment industry, because we think that the pigment industry is going to be exhibiting at PaintIndia 2024 in full glory and in full strength. We can see that this is again based on first-hand feedback that we have received from them. And again, this is an endeavor to give a very clear buying space for visitors who are there only for pigments, because the global element of buying will be seen most strongly in the particular pigment industry. And that's why a standalone hall for all the pigment companies. Then you have hall number 1, which is the largest hall, and all the remaining portfolios, which is additives, emulsions, synthetic resins, and multi-product companies, including manufacturers and distributors, would be occupying this particular space. So this is how we have demarcated the different product portfolios that are there. There could be a little bit of crossover here and there, but by and large, this is the template that we are trying to follow. So there are a few questions that have come in terms of the allocations. And let me maybe it's easier for me to explain in the context of those questions. So I'll pause my narrative in terms of the product bifurcations and the hall bifurcations for now. By the way, all of these halls are deeply interconnected. So while on the outside, each of them have their standalone importance and their standalone structure and identity, they are all connected from within inside. So you have, ladies and gentlemen, the experience of one seamless exhibition. No hall or no product portfolio is lesser or greater than the other. It is just a matter of intelligent and convenient demarcation into product profiles and zones in the interests of the exhibitors and the visitors. But the experience for exhibitors and visitors alike is going to be of one seamless exhibition. And this is a very, very important point for us to show that our commitment is uniform across the board in terms of these exhibitors and these product profiles. So that's as far as the allocations and the floor plan is concerned. I was half tempted to show you what the floor plan would look like, but I would rather wait for those 5 or 6 days that it will take for the floor plan to be ready in its entirety, and then we can start the booking process immediately. The pricing, of course, it's something that is finally going to be a huge determinant for everyone in terms of their participation. We have a commitment that we had made in the last 2022 show in Mumbai that we will maintain the same prices for PaintIndia 2024. So it's simple in that sense, because once we made a commitment, we'd like to stick with it. So in spite, but I must again put on record, it's not been easy in these inflationary times. The costs, it's not your problem, that's our lookout, but it's still better in the interest of disclosure and transparency, which is why I'm doing this webinar, to put on record that costs have gone up significantly everywhere, including the venue costs, including the service costs, including manpower costs. But since we have made a commitment, we are keeping the bare space constant at last time's levels, which is 15,000 rupees per square meter, and something similar for the international pricing also, which we'll make available. For the shell scheme, we have a marginal increase from 16,000 to 16,500, which is just about 3%. But that is not just an arbitrary price increase. There were certain consumables and services which were earlier missing in our shell scheme package. Those are being bundled into it for the convenience of everyone. And of course, that comes at a slightly incremental cost. So at a real and a notional level, ladies and gentlemen, the price is being maintained constant, which means effectively we are keeping a price constant for almost 4 years. The next price increase for the Bombay edition will take place in 2026. So again, that's a part of our commitment. I must say it's not been easy, but since we had made this commitment, and we are committed to ensuring that we make a really grand platform for showcasing our industry at rational prices, we keep the price levels constant as they are. So that brings me to the end of my narrative, and I would like to sign off the formal part of my narrative by reiterating our vision. Again, putting it on record. You have seen I have started being vocal about this, but again, I'm happy to repeat it. The PaintIndia 2024 event in a standalone basis, of course, is going to be a very, very, very important, significant, and successful edition, even based on prior commitments and prior foresight, which we now have based on our experience and intelligence that is there. But in the larger scheme of things, or in the long-term vision, I do not want to lose sight of the fact that this is a significant milestone and stepping stone towards our endeavor to become the leading coating show in the world. And with all of your support and blessings, I think we can achieve this before the turn of this decade. So perhaps on that positive note, I would like to throw open the floor for questions and stop the monologue bit. So, okay, so there is one interesting comment which says, since you're extending the scope of participation from coatings to include other segments, would it not be worth considering changing the name of the show. So yeah, yes, this is feedback that we've got not only because of the scope. So it's basically, what is it? It's Paint and India, right? Paint India. So they say on the one hand, it's not only paints by my own admission, but it's also beyond India. So both Paint and India, of course, the brand Paint India has such a wonderful ring to it, and it has such global recognition. But are we kind of inherently restricting the scope of the event? The answer is no. It's just about finding the balance between the good old name that is there and enhancing the scope. So we will, at this particular foreseeable future, we will continue to retain the name, but we will amplify the message that we are not just about paints and we are not just about India. So thanks for that comment. It makes perfect sense. But at this point, we will cling on to the emotion and the value that the brand name Paint India has. So one more question that we have is, we will be a new exhibitor at this time's Paint India, intending to have a large space. If you are going to be doing a reallocation of existing spaces to others, how is it that we can be accommodated, A, per se, and B, with a favorable location? So perfectly valid question. As I said, we are doing this rollover, and believe me, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a marketing gimmick or a loose statement. If I do go by the commitments that I have got purely from existing players, just from existing players, we are already not only sold out with our existing space, but probably sold out by a factor of 110%, which means we already need 10% more space. So we are working on the debottlenecking of spaces. We are expanding the halls that are there in the foreseeable manner to accommodate the greater demand that we have. The debottlenecking and the optimization of space is also happening. So we must also understand that when we talk of 2020 as a frame of references, of course, there will be companies who would want a smaller space. There will be companies who want a larger space. There will be new companies who want to participate. There will be old companies who do not want to participate, which is their choice. There are some companies which do not exist from 2020 as a result of merger, acquisition, or just shutdown. So we will be factoring all these changes into the picture, but to be very committal, specific, and clear on this particular query, because in fact it's coming from three people, this with different wording. Obviously, the fact that you're a new exhibitor is not going to be held against you. We are committed to accommodating in a timely manner, of course, every genuine request that comes in. How we will do it in an intelligent and fair way, because on the one hand, we are committed to everyone who does come and respectfully and genuinely approach us. But at the same time, we cannot let go of the loyalty factor. So we will balance this. It's a complex, I mean, the process, the outcome is going to be very simple, but the process is a bit complex. At this particular time, I would request all of you to just trust us that justice will be done to you, and you will get a location and a configuration that is completely fair and commensurate with your expectations. And let this sentiment be parked out there as a bit of a comfort, and we will see it play out in real time in terms of actually seeing those locations that are being allocated to you. The charges for overseas exhibitors, I'm sorry, I don't recollect it, but of course, it's all in the public domain. We'll be sharing all of the costs with you. There is one more comment. Since the show has become popular and expecting more exhibitors, would it not be advisable to increase the number of days from 3 to 4? So we are closely monitoring this. Honestly, let me tell you, we have feedback. So there is one set of feedback which says maybe, and you're not the first one this is to the person who's raised this query. You're not the first one who's asking whether it should go from 3 days to 4 days. There are others. On the other hand, there are also people who are saying maybe you can even go from 3 days to 2 days. And I think 3 days to 2 days for the scale of Paint India is not feasible anymore. So that is, of course, not there, but I'm just saying that it has come in as a comment. At this particular point, based on the costs, not only for us, but for all of you, based on the costs, based on the time, based on the efforts, we believe that for a coating show, 3 days is an optimum duration. However, we are completely receptive to feedback, and going ahead in the future, if the show must become 4 days, we are completely good to reflect the aspirations and needs of all of you. I must qualify this particular decision to keep it to 3 days this time in the context of the only two shows that are larger than Paint India in the world are China Coat and the European Coating Show. And these are significantly larger than Paint India, by the way. But even these shows have only a 3 day duration. So at this point in time, we will stick with the 3 day duration. But if the industry demands us to change the duration, whether upwards or downwards, in a justifiable way, we will be completely adaptable to it. Yeah, so we had a couple of people who also so it's like a +1 comment on the 3 to 4 days, and there are 3 people who have also said that 2020 we did not participate, the good location. I think my answer remains the same for all of you. Please have that faith in us in terms of believing that we will do justice to all of you. Okay, just trying to go through the unanswered questions. Okay, there's one comment or question which says that I'm assuming it's from a new exhibitor because old exhibitors would know how we work. So they wanted to know the methodology because the comment was that many other shows accept participation forms and with the size and preferred dimensions, but the allocation is done at a very late stage and it's done in a arbitrary manner without any choice for us. Is this the case with Paint India? So anyone who has participated in Paint India knows that it's a very democratic, transparent and easy process. The floor plan will be made available to you publicly before you make a choice. While we cannot guarantee your choice number 1, 2, or 3, finally, the choice of booth that you make is not a blind decision for you. You don't have to send in a form which says, for example, 50 square meters, and then we as organizers choose what is convenient or pliable for us and impose that choice on you. When you sign up on the dotted or sign on the dotted line for a particular space, you know its exact location, you know its exact configuration. So this is a comfort level that we are reiterating. If you are participating, we are assured that it is a participation that is being already done to your satisfaction in terms of the choice of location. Okay, there is also one question. Okay, again, some of these questions obviously will be from new time exhibitors because the old ones know it. So what are the premiums for 1, 2 and 3 side open booths? Yes, it's very common in the exhibition industry to have premiums and extra charges for booths, the same 40 square meters. If it's one side open, you have a base rate of, let's say, 100, and then you'll have for 2 sides open a 10% premium and 3 sides open 20%. We have not done all of that. We have kind of, let's say, flatlined our pricing structure to be a very predictable and easily manageable budgetary structure. So we have only one rate without any premiums for any of these 2 side open or 3 side open configurations that are there. So there are no premiums for it because I know that other shows do it, but we believe that we don't need to do that. But it's on a first come, first serve basis, the availability of these locations. And once again, the loyalty factor is going to be very, very important. We cannot harp on it enough. Those who have been supporting us for all these years will continue to enjoy that loyalty in terms of the choice of location. Whether if it translates into a 2 side, 3 side preferential location, so be it. Okay, there are a few questions about the end use element. So basically, a few paint companies and application equipment companies are asking us about whether there is a choice or an opportunity, or whether it is genuinely beneficial for them to participate at this particular event. So let me first start by going into history. Paint India historically has been a show where the exhibitor profile is for those who are supplying to the manufacturers of paints, adhesive sealants, and all the segments that I told you. So in the past, we have, barring 2008 on one occasion, we have dissuaded paint companies. So believe me, every Paint India, I'm talking of 15, 16, 18, 20 companies from the paint industry who actually approach us saying we'd also like to exhibit, and we politely tell them it's not a benefit to you. So the focus will continue to be on this, but we think that our basket of services to the paint industry will be complete if we can start doing something in the application segment also. Eventually, that will call for a different show, but this time we are planning to reintroduce our paint shop module, which will be very, very small format booths for paint companies, but only industrial B2B paint manufacturing companies. I repeat, those who are in decorative paints selling in the B2C segment or selling pure architectural exterior interior coatings, it is of no benefit for you to exhibit. I'm being very, very candid about it. But B2B industrial coatings and application equipment, there is a certain merit in it, but we will guide you in terms of the kind of space. So we are not overselling the space. It will be smaller space so that the budget and the expectations are kept to moderate levels. So we will reach out to you at the right time for this particular thing. Do bear in mind, this was a concept that was called Paint Shop, which was popular at the time, but we could not nurse it at that time because there was much more work to be done. So there are a few questions also on the branding opportunities. So which basically means that apart from the space, you go to any large format event across the world or in India, including Paint India, you see a lot of paraphernalia that surrounds the show in terms of on-site buntings and all kinds of branding opportunities that are there. So yes, they will be there this time also, but that will be opened up around Diwali, because the focus right now is going to, or maybe a bit earlier, but the focus for the next 4 months, which is where we believe. So beginning, if we start roughly on the 1st of May, June, July, and August, these 4 months, we see ourselves selling about 80% of our floor space. After that, we will focus on the other branding elements that are there. Yes, I was actually waiting for my favorite question and it has come. So, what are the discounts available on pricing? So, the easy answer and the truthful answer is there are no discounts. But again, rather than coming across as a arrogant and a curt answer, let me assure everyone and qualify it by saying that it is a uniform policy that we have implemented across the board. And we are very, very proud of this, because all of you in the supply chain know that implementing uniform pricing and uniform conditions in terms of payments, etc., is not easy. Because, of course, there are people who would rightfully expect something based on loyalty, something based on early bird, something based on size. Somebody says, I'm taking the largest booth available, I should get a concession. Somebody says, I'm just an MSME, I should be getting it. I'm a first-time participant. What about some inducement or some special concession? Somebody says, I've been participating since your grandfather's time. All of these are valid points and requests. But the easiest thing for us to do, not to implement, it was difficult in the lead up, but over a period of time, we have implemented it. And it is such a transparent mechanism. Everyone knows, of course, everyone asks, and I'm happy to repeat this statement again and again in a friendly manner. But we are very, very proud that we have reached a regime and a time where every single exhibitor enjoys only one uniform rate, which is either an international rate or a domestic rate, a shell scheme rate or a bare space rate. There is no fifth category that is there in this. And of course, again, it is a dangerous commitment to make if I'm not being true to it, because it's a small industry, right? The same marketing manager who was heading company A is, of course, the nature of our industry is he's going to be heading company B, and so on and so forth. But if my statement where I have, let's say, sweet talk all of you into convincing you that there are uniform rates, and if I've made any exceptions with this kind of transient industry structure, we will stand exposed. And then that is the biggest threat and the biggest slur on our brand. We will never get into that. The commitment is it's uniform pricing and it's fair to everyone. So if we want to realize 100 rupees from you, there are two ways to do it. We just be honest and say, listen, it's 100. This is how it is. Or we can do the more convenient and pliable route of saying, okay, our rate is 120, but because we love you so much and you're such a dear customer, we can reduce it to 100 and from 120 to 100. But we choose the honest and transparent and uniform route. So sorry if that disappoints you, but there are no discounts. But if it makes you feel any better, it's an assurance that everyone enjoys the same rate. And again, I'm happy to be held accountable to this. If anyone can come back with an authoritative statement that there are price variations being made, I'll happily give you your booth free of cost and even pay you for exhibiting. But that's the level of confidence and integrity that we have in formulating our pricing. Okay, there is one question saying that it's part question, part comment, saying we are very, very happy that you are focusing on international customers and other application areas or customer areas. It gives us better returns on our investment. That is, of course, exactly the point why we are doing this. But the question is, how do you think you can get more and more visitors from abroad? I think I covered it, right? I mean, we spoke on the one hand, as I said, it's basically there are two large levers that are there. One is our efforts, which I have kind of shared with you. We are traveling the globe on a consistent basis. And these are not random travels. These are very intense travels. We are partnering with various countries, associations, outfits. So PaintIndia is occupying a pride of place wherever you go. You'll see PaintIndia, a lot more of PaintIndia. So this is a conscious strategy. And as I said, a huge chunk of the credit goes to our country at this time. India in 2020s is a global force to be reckoned with. So again, being at the right place at the right time, and all of you, okay, all of you are the biggest magnet, the biggest draw that will get overseas visitors in. So a combination of these three factors emboldens me to make this commitment on a public platform like this. So please be assured and please hold us accountable. So we are reaching the documented 4 p.m. end, and I think I have also exhausted all the questions that are there. So if there are any other questions, I'll be happy to take them. If not, I just wanted to go back to my presentation. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, this was what we wanted to cover, and I think I have. Just this one slide I wanted to leave you with, and this slide will help me convey a lot of what I think I already have, but I wanted to. So this was from the inauguration of PaintIndia 2022, where you know from experience and from past data that we have a formal inauguration ceremony, ribbon cutting and lamp lighting. And it's not one or two dignitaries, but it's a plethora of industry leaders who come there. So apart from a bit of bragging rights that I get by having such luminaries in one photograph, it's a very beautiful photograph because it actually highlights the point that we are trying to make, and it accentuates what we stand for at PaintIndia. So we are committed, of course, to the growth of the Indian coatings and related industries, but without any biases, without any prejudices, without any favoritisms. And what this means is, irrespective of the scale of the company, okay, you might be a 29,000 crore company, or you might be a 50 lakh company, our commitment to you is still the same. Geography doesn't matter. Paint India is held in Mumbai right now. Of course, we've started Delhi, but Mumbai, because it's the paint capital of India and it deserves to hold this show in the current scheme of times. But no matter which geography you belong to, we are equally committed to you, no matter which segment. You might be industrial, you might be deco, you might be powder, radcure, whatever it is. We are not differentiating you in terms of which segment you belong to. Our commitment is across the board. In terms of the origins, what that means is, are you a multinational company? Are you a homegrown Indian company? Are you a bought out company? Are you a greenfield, ground up company? It doesn't matter. A commitment is still the same. Verticals, as I said, paints and coatings might still be the biggest vertical that we deal with, but we are committed across. Once you are in our circle of interest, we will go the whole hog to ensure that we service you. Functions, again, we are not trying to make this an elitist kind of event where it's only the CEOs. This is not a CEO conclave. This is a public, broad-based exhibition. So whether you're a CEO, whether you're a production executive, whether you belong to technology, whether you belong to procurement, whether you belong to sales, marketing, operations, wherever you are, this show is for everyone who belongs to this particular industry. And again, the legacy also, as I said, it doesn't matter if you are a company which has been formulated or which has come into existence in the last 6 months, or you could be the oldest paint company in India starting in 1902. Our commitment, ladies and gentlemen, is uniform across the board. And I can proudly say this is one of the reasons why Paint India is where it is today. Of course, with all your support, we are neutral, we are unbiased, and our commitment is very, very singularly focused for the uniform growth of the coatings industry in India. So the questions have already been taken. It's good to remind ourselves once again. This webinar, the recording is going to be made available, as I said, for your reference, and also so that every point that I have said can be taken as a commitment from me. So we will be opening up, before I sign off, we will be opening up with the actual floor plan being sent to all of you somewhere in the first week of May. Individually, we will reach out to you also before that, because some of you are already engaging with us. Let's get this process started. It's not very difficult, because transparency brings that element of ease. Of course, it also brings a little element of heartburn, but being transparent, being easy, and being honest about what we are doing is going to allow us to go through this process of booking in a very, very smooth manner. And we want to get it done with early, for the simple reason that we want to invest maximum time of ours back into the marketing, promotion, and the visitor experience for this event. So let's get started. This event, as I said, I'm sitting in front of you as a convener, the director, whatever you want to call it, of Paint India. But we believe honestly that it is an event that is owned by the industry today. It has been made what it is by all of you as exhibitors, as visitors, as stakeholders, as supporters, and we are just the person. It's like an Amul philosophy, okay? I mean, everyone comes together, grows, but somebody has to lead the project. So that's a responsibility that has been given to us, and we will continue to execute it to the best of our ability and honesty. So let's make this a grand event, not only to justify our individual investments into it, but also so that at a macro level, we can really showcase the disposition of India as the leading coatings destination and the leading specialty chemicals destination the world over. What seems like a bit of a philosophical statement and a vain boast, I hope and I'm optimistic that in 2030 and thereabouts, when Paint India really assumes the mantle of the leading coating show globally, we can all proudly look back at this runway that we have all created together, including this webinar, and just be happy and proud that we have been part of the process. So let the clock start ticking now in terms of the countdown to Paint India 2024. It's just about 300 days, which seems like a long time, but given the scale of what we want to achieve, it's already high time that we get started. So look forward to engaging with all of you, and we will spare no effort in ensuring that this becomes a really, really special show for all of you. So thank you. I sign out for the moment, but it's the end of the webinar, but it's only the start of our engagement for Paint India 2024. So thank you, everyone. Have a good evening, and let's continue to be in touch. Thank you.